You're listening to the MLS Fantasy Insider, bringing you weekly tips, tricks, and advice for the official MLS fantasy game.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the MLS Fantasy Insider. Let's see here, working on getting all the social out. Had to make sure got Toddler Roo to bed. I guess he's almost not that anymore. Got Toddler Roo to bed. Got early morning tomorrow, so little bit after our target start time, but not too bad. Not too bad. Working on getting that social out right now, so hitting up here at Twitter, YouTube, Blue Skies. Posting that there. Posting this here. So there's the first social out there on Twitter and Blue Skies. So if you could be so kind and to like and share, that helps us oh so much. Gene is here in chat, so we will be sure to do the thing.
Recording in progress.
There we go. Recording is in progress. Let me get the old ping over at Discord so everyone knows that we are live with the show. This is not a double game week. That was a wild double game week, though. This is our round 10, week 10. Game week. This is definitely an evolution year for me. If it's round or week or game round or whatever, it's kind of throwing it around, see what sticks, kind of.
Different for SoFi or Kickbase or MLS
or Matt Doyle's articles or ESPN's or like whoever, like things like people put different stuff out there. So there is part one, but we all know what we're talking about. Let's see here. Here.
Wait, I can't hear you.
Oh, no, I'm mumbling. I was mumbling as I was getting the social ready. So, all right, there we go. We are out there. We have the... What's up, Samuel? That's good to see, as always, Gene. So we are, like I said, live to you here talking about the Week 10 preview. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time here on YouTube, welcome. You have found the MLS Fantasy Insider. We come to you live pretty much every Monday to talk about the official MLS fantasy game, which this year is now Kickbase. But we also have some tidbits that we think cross over into other games like SofaScore or FootD, kind of the three big ones that are going on right now. Or for those of you who do your own little homebrew, we hope that you find some interesting tips as well. But it's a year in evolution, but we are still here every week to talk about the beautiful game in the United States. And so we are so happy to have you here with us. If you like that sort of thing, then hit the like and subscribe button. The bell notification helps so much for our engagement and to help people find our community here. So all of that is out there. I think we've started to get a few people trickling into chat. What up, Eric? And we are going to go ahead and get the show started. Hello and welcome to the MLS Fantasy Insider, our preview of Game Week 10 of the 2026 MLS Fantasy season. This episode is brought to you by Winless in Miami. Sad face. Actually brought to you by the amazing MLS Fantasy Insider Patreons. It's because of you that we're able to keep this project going. Find out more over at patreon.com/MLSFI. I'm your host, Reid Connolly from MLSFantasyBoss.com, and tonight I'm joined by my partner in fantasy, our special guest co-host, Ron, the Fantasy Physician Birnbaum. How you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing well. Happy to be here with you.
I am so happy to have you here as well. For those of you who haven't kept up with it, we have some fun news to announce, and that is our very own Tyler Ranchinator Norman has bought him his first house. Maybe it's an apartment, I don't know, but he has been moving, and he said he got like 17,000 steps today or yesterday or something, and so he is taking a well-deserved break from the show, and so we're happy that he and his wife are able to have their first little place, and so that should be super fun. But he'll be back on the show in a little bit after he recovers from everything. But we want to wish him well and just make sure people know, because like Tyler's been pretty regular this season. It seems like when people don't pop up for a while, they're like, oh no, what happened? Tyler's cool, just got him a house. We're happy to be able to have Ron more often on the show with us this year, and so that is super fun. Well, of course, the big news from last week is this was the first massive double game week. It was handled a couple of different ways depending on the platform that you were playing, between Kickbase or between SofaScore. Kickbase had the more, we'll call it, traditional format of everything getting lumped into one round. SofaScore, of course, broke it up over 2 different rounds for the points there. Whichever platform you were using, I hope you killed it, and I hope you had a real good time. And what we're here to talk to you about is there's some of the takeaways that we had from that past double game week. Massive scores, interesting results. And so if you're in chat with us right now, let us know how your team did, how your matchups went with your head-to-heads. Anything that you want to share, let us know what your takeaways were from that round. And Ron, I'll let you kick us off with the same question. What are your takeaways, fantasy takeaways?
Well, one is like I still love double game weeks. I mean, just because like I like playing MLS fantasy, so I like playing more of it. And it's a fun kind of wild week. Like there were rotations, and we'll talk about all that. But some specifics. So first, 2026 will be like the year of the beta test, right? Like
Mm.
every platform that's out, first of all, multiple platforms. We know we've been talking about that. And I would say Kickbase is figuring out the double game week still on its app. Like it worked, but in some views, like it's not bad when you're looking at a squad, like because then it's laid out, like a kind of like a team view in the old app. But when you clicked on like a match to see what was going on, especially over the weekend, you had this like crazy gamish of the 2 different matches that those players played, like both of their scores, and sometimes they were like superimposed on each other, and sometimes there was these like big wide gaps between people. So it was like a lot of head scratching. And then on like Silver Score, I still like about maybe every other time I think I saved some change I made or something, and then only to find out it didn't actually happen, even though I think I found the confirm button. But anyhow, it just feels like everything's a little bit like we're in beta testing mode. So that's one thing, but I still had fun. As far as what we saw on the field and how it connects to our fantasy decisions, first, I think we need to look at San Jose. And first, they're an amazing story this year, right? Because it's nobody really thought they could be this good. It's a juggernaut. It's full of like people who went to college in the United States, like not traditional like ways to build a roster in MLS. It has, arguably the greatest American coach of all time, and he's 74. He's still kind of doing amazing things. And I think one revelation of the season, we've known in the background that Nico Tsakiris is like a talent, but they put the number 10 on the guy, and he has been a standout in MLS and an absolute Kickbase standout, right? And then like what happens this week? Well, what another thing that's happening is Timo Werner has like really appeared on the scene in a big way. And so for me, like one of the big take homes of these weeks was the couple times that and we were like touting Securis as a good choice, and he was still a decent choice last week. But he like gets up to like on the to like he's about to take the penalties, and in both games he then hands the ball over to Timo Werner, and I think that's important because that's like if your heart dropped at that moment, and I think any people who like Captain Werner had like the best weeks in whatever platform they played. Yeah, great week. But I think that's just reflects that team is good, and we're going to be going back to them, but they're evolving, and you're going to have to make decisions between these very good players. And so that's one thing that was a takeaway. likewise, like whatever has been, afflicting him up in Minnesota, James Rodriguez actually finally started a match. And, you know, he both, he looked sort of rusty in that he was like launching balls over the goal, but he still actually scored pretty well. Like he's obviously going to be a central hog when he's playing, if he's playing. And so I just think, well, like I think he had like it was like a 150 or something like that with no goal contributions in kick base. So that's a new development up there. San Diego is officially a struggling team. So that's like my next observation. I mean, I think everybody's been kind of aware of that. They've lost 4 in a row. They've had tons of red cards, tons of turnover in their defense. Yippee Twerskov, who's a very important player for that team, went down with an injury in this last game. And so I think you're going to have to sort of see it to believe it before you really start turning to San Diego again. And that I think will be true this week. There's going to be somebody who takes them against a heavily, embattled LAFC team who's like in CONCACAF, but San Diego's down. And then, you know, I think another thing pretty obvious, if a team is playing against Sporting Kansas City, you should give some serious thought to taking as many players from that team as possible. Like they're a legitimately, bottom of everything, every category team, and they will reward you by choosing against them. I think that a couple of our teams that we've looked at like that, like DC United and Montreal, have been a little tougher. Like Montreal has won a couple games in a row. DC United has surprised a little bit. So I still don't want to ignore the underlying numbers, which also actually says to go ahead and pick against those folks. But um, it's Sporting Kansas City is the clear like punching bag to like beat up.
Yep.
And having been that team in the past, LA Galaxy, who's won against RSL I'll just say one important thing from Galaxy is their underlying numbers have been a little better than what their record has showed and or shown. And an important event, I think, was Jakub Glesnes coming to the back line this weekend. So he played the first half, and don't take Galaxy players against Vancouver this weekend. Please don't do that. But I just think you're going to be seeing some okay things coming out of that team.
It's funny. It's funny to hear you talk about understanding what the punching bag is like. When how many stars do you have over your crest?
No. Oh, yeah. Well, and which just makes it more it makes it more painful, right? Like those who've never had, it's like what you live in a state of loss, right? Right? Like a permanent fall from grace. So
big struggle for Kansas City. No, those are some great takeaways. Going to give a quick shout out to Samuel in chat who scored 2,900 points, 2,955 in the MLS Fantasy Boss Kickbase Challenge last round. That's amazing. I got like 2,300, I think, myself. So I know last week we had talked about potential 1,000-point captains, and I wanted to hear about those. Saw a few options, but just to mention it, it was not Messi who came away with the crown for that. I'm pretty sure I haven't looked up through everyone, but I think it was Zinkernagel who came away with the highest score of the round. Unfortunately, what you can see in the app for the top score from the round is only from the second game, so it's not a combination of those. But I'm pretty sure he got a 300-some and a 200-some. I know that Kuiper's got a couple hundred. No, you're shaking your head. No, Ron. Did somebody else get more?
No, only played one game. That single score was the.
I don't think the others are added in there. Like I didn't see. I would have thought Messi would have been higher than some of that, but I don't think it added them together.
I actually don't know. I don't know. Zinkernagel only played one match. Chicago played one match.
Some massive scores. Kuiper's is up there then with that one. But I say that to say this is not the first time we've talked about the success of Chicago. They are firing on a lot of cylinders right now, and that has been something that's consistent. Kuiper's comes back, 2 braces back to back since coming back, and so this is definitely a team that has talent, and the rebuild they did a year or so ago seems to be paying off. So be sure that you're not sleeping on Chicago going forward. The real theme of this round was heavy rotation, heavy rotation that we saw. Even at people like Daniel with San Jose rotating a keeper, which hardly ever happens. So there's heavy rotation, and it's easy to see why. So many teams have been going multiple games a week because of CONCACAF Champions Cup, because of the Open Cup, because of just the schedule that's going on around the league. There's just so much going on that we can see why there's so much rotation, and more is coming, and we'll get to that in our housekeeping section. So these double game weeks, first massive one. There's so much going on right now. It's easy to see why that's happened, and that's one of the interesting quirks of the fantasy game. But we saw that in full force this week with a lot of rotation there. But I say, Daniel, still wow for San Jose. Just amazing results against LA. Amazing results against Minnesota. Was that the other game they had against Minnesota? If you saw some of the articles that have come out, some of the messaging, like record breaking, record setting opening to the season so far from San Jose, and so an amazing turnaround from some years past. Some amazing fantasy targets. Does not look like it is ending yet. So that's just amazing to see there. Personally, for me, big FC Cincinnati bounce back. My best friend put it best in a text that he sent to me of an image that was basically dividing Cincinnati games into three sections. The first section being like, hey, maybe we can do this. The second section of, I hate everything. And then the last section being like, oh, good, we tied. So again, coming back to the 4-4 draw, but then getting the win in the second one. And the reason I point that out is we've talked about his Cincinnati on the verge of a bet against team, and they may still be teetering, but it seems like some of that attack is starting to settle back in with Evander and with Dinke and with Barlow and people like that. So it seems like they're starting to find some of that connection. Defense still very much questionable, especially rolling out. I don't know, Ron. I think calling what Cincinnati rolled when they got the clean sheet. When they got the clean sheet, I find it generous to even call that a C team that they rolled out for their back line. I mean, that's just like a MacGyvered paper clips and duct tape defense that they had.
Yeah, I'd say that was for me the single biggest surprise of the week. I
Yeah,
was like, this defense when it came out looked like you should be picking against it. So to get a clean sheet in that game was really, really outperforming expectations. They had like Gidi, I think, was somewhere in the back line, and then they had a 17-year-old center back, Chirla, who I think he scored a goal in the first game, and I heard played really well in the second game, and so yeah, like it's a kind of as a because MLS
oh for sure,
type.
100%.
Yeah, I mean it's like yeah,
Yeah,
but
but it was
you know,
worth mentioning because of that. I don't know what their defense is going to look like going forward, but I do think there are some legitimate conversations to have fantasy wise for some attacking potential for some of the Cincinnati players. Tease this at the very beginning, but I tell you, Miami can't get a break, and I for one am here for it. There are still definitely viable fantasy options that Miami has, and some of that we'll definitely be talking about in the second part of the show. But they cannot get a win in their brand new fancy stadium at home. They're getting the draws. They're not, I guess, losing them all, but they're not winning. They don't have the W, and that is definitely infuriating for them. I love it, but I think I'm on the record as to why that is. But for fantasy wise, it's not this fortress of points and of that we would maybe expect from Messi at home just to kind of go into goal bonanzas. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Keep an eye on the opponent. Eventually, it will come. They won't go winless forever, but it's not this sure bet. And as we've talked about before, Messi is not the sure auto bet each round either.
although I'll just say that like because I think he was low on goal contributions but he's still his like floor is still really really good. Like I think I was looking at
Agree.
in other words, he still manages to accumulate through all the little actions and big actions, pretty good numbers. And so, you know, Miami's is absolutely still a fantasy viable team. Like, I don't want people to come away with the wrong thing. I just think,
Yeah,
yes, you
yeah.
could be looking around. Yes.
Yeah, no, for sure, and I will say that I'm talking strictly as a captain from here. Like I do think there's space for him on your team, budget and the system that you're playing under that consideration, but not an exclude, but not like the auto ACM like we've seen in the past. I'm going to add one more team to your list, Ron. You had mentioned Sporting Kansas City, DCU, Montreal getting a little tougher, but Sporting Kansas City be a pick against. I'm thinking Philadelphia is pretty much right there in that same conversation. They have just not been able to get a lot clicking with all the transition that's happened with that team, and so I think you're perfectly reasonable when you're like, yeah, that's a team that I think could ship points or be a definite an opportunity for other players that they're who their opponents to come away with more fantasy points. I think that is a very viable target as well. And then finally, I know there have been some successes. You mentioned a little bit about this, about DCU getting tougher. Slow play 'em is I think just be careful about going too hard into DC. I know that they went up against Red Bull this round, and like that's a team very easy with the counterattack. DC ate them up with all that, so just be aware of the big numbers. Don't go all in too quickly, but I can definitely see some thoughts and considerations of maybe wanting to look at those guys. I still think there are usually some better options before you hit some of the DC players, but definitely not bet against territory. I think they're perfectly capable of putting up a good fight, which can turn to points depending on what you're looking at and what system you're playing
Right. But it's worth pointing out, like, Buddy, well, I think he got injured, but like he had a hat trick in the
in. Yeah,
first game, I think. And like, you get that guy the ball, he knows how to put it in the back of the net. So it's, I really with you, like, you just have to watch them a little bit.
yeah,
Don't just assume, like, it's very easy. Like, there's kind of an inertia to the fantasy mind, right? Where you're sort of like, patterns over time that you okay, like bet against DC, bet against San Jose, and like you have to sometimes break out of it, but by watching, the way to
right.
break out is watch.
Like last round of the double game week, opened up against New York Red Bull, which very high line, very young team, got ate up by the counterattack. Second game at home, Orlando, awful team that we've been betting against so many times. 3-2. They gave up a couple of goals, but 3-2. So definitely a pretty easy round for them this week, going up against New York City FC. Likely not going to see a repeat of some of that success from this round. I would take that's just me, but I would assume this one, and then they've got Nashville, and then they've got Chicago. So I mean, I'm looking for maybe a little bit of a more difficult run for DC. So slow play them. You could have some options. I still think we're going to see people who are better, but. Some good takeaways. Going to chat real quick, just seeing if anybody's there. Looks like you see here. Nope. People really happy to see Montreal represent. They've new coach, so we'll see what kind of bump they've got going on up there. So lots of some changes right there. And then Gene says that New York City is getting close to joining the Bet Against club. I don't know. I don't know if I'd call New York City FC Bet Against. So I don't know. Would you agree with that, Ron?
I no, because I think the underlying numbers say they're still an important team, and it's conditional, and they have kind of like, you know productive fantasy players,
Yeah.
right? Like sometimes the team looks good, but sort of like hard to figure out who to take. But you kind of know, like, okay, if it's going to be Forrest, it's going to be Nico, and if it's going to be a midfielder, it's probably going to be Maxi Morales. Like that's its own value that you sort of, it's a mostly straightforward who to take from that team. So yeah, I'm not. The team can struggle and still be decent fantasy
Absolutely,
choice for sure.
absolutely. Yeah, I do not think we're in bet against territory. But who are we thinking that we're going to bet for? That's exactly what we're going to be talking about, as well as some little important housekeeping tips, which will be all part of our discussion coming up right after this. I have a dog who is giving me all the signs that she wants to go outside, but she has already been outside. Thank you, ma'am. You do not need to go outside. It is also very windy and you will blow away. None of that is necessary. And you have had 3 bones. Now sit there. Sit. Good girl. Sorry. Distraction. Distraction. Let's see here. Scroll. Right there. Make that screen bigger. And that's good. Social. Pink. Post. The one annoying thing about cross posting on Twitter and Blue Sky is having to change my ats to the different formats so that it picks up the people correctly.
Yeah. Oh, right. Because Blue Sky has
the whole little thing. Fortunately, it pretty much picks it up, but people have some different naming structures between the 2 platforms. So it is what it is. It is what it is. Though with the news that's been coming out lately, I'm wondering how much longer they'll be the Vancouver Whitecaps. So we'll see what happens with all of that.
I see. And yeah. Maybe we might get a Tanasevich started right back this week. Yeah, good point. Because Tavon Gray got a red card. A little unfortunate, but that creates opportunities. Let's see what he costs.
All right. I think we are ready to get back. Hello and welcome back. We're talking about some quick housekeeping as we're going into our game week 10 preview. Some quick breaking news though, if you haven't been paying attention, if you're playing the Kickbase fantasy game, there's been a little bit of a tease about a new fantasy draft system that they are teasing. So there are several people from the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord who are participating in that, and so that could be a new game format for those of you interested in draft. That could be available natively through Kickbase in the future. I know that's been something that's been requested from the classic game pretty often, some support for draft, and a lot of people have their own little homebrew system. So that could be something native that you see soon. Anyway, housekeeping. So everything's back to single game week this round. No buys, no DGWs, no crazy structures, except there is a lot of soccer happening this week. What we're focused on for points with fantasy is, of course, the regular season, and that kicks off on Saturday, May 2nd at 1 o'clock p.m. Your typical Apple TV lineup there, all the 30s, a couple of 45s at the beginning. Pay attention. No rolling lockouts with Kickbase or Sofa, so just be sure you have everything ready by 1 o'clock p.m. on Saturday, and that kicks off with Toronto hosting the San Jose Earthquakes. Should be a pretty interesting game right there. To note, there are a couple of games on Sunday, and I mentioned that just for your planning with these teams. New York City FC hosting DC and Austin hosting St. Louis. Both of those teams are playing starting at 3 p.m. and then 5:30 p.m. on Sunday, so keep an eye on that. But you're going to see some competition.
The value of looking at these Open Cup games. Sometimes you see new players come online or other things like that. But we're now in the round of 16. For a lot of these teams, they can potentially they're win 4 games and you have a trophy, or you can really get to it's getting more important, the tournament. And so what I tend to do midweek is say
recording in progress.
Is watch is look over kind of the box scores and see were there any matches, were there any injury subs, or were there any matches that went 120 minutes into penalties, and especially ask questions like, is there a team that played a tough midweek match who also played the whole double game week last week? And that stuff will start to inform your decision making for the weekend, right? Like, wow, maybe this team is really just like going to be just, dusted from exhaustion from the midweek. So that's my 2 cents worth on that.
No, I think that's a great tip. For those of you who weren't with us during the live stream, had some technical difficulties, and so there'll be some editing of this episode. But yeah, we're getting it together, and appreciate everyone for sticking through all of that. And yeah, that's great tips. I mean, we already saw guys who went so long during this double game week and had these big games that are coming up, and it's just a lot of congestion, which is why I said at the beginning of the show that like rotation was the theme of last week. It is equally the theme of this week. So there's going to be a lot of crazy stuff, a lot of differential options. So be sure to keep up with Tyler's article this week for sure, because it will probably definitely be needed. Other than that, go ahead. You're going to say something?
No, well, and I mean, just also, these really important matches for Nashville and LAFC
Yeah.
are going like they're going to be focused on that because they're in the semifinals of CONCACAF.
Yep.
And those are tough, home and away. That the weekend is sandwiched between those things. So you really like are taking risks if you take players from those teams. They may have some favorable matchups in certain ways, but like just be careful because you can't predict what's going to happen
No, absolutely.
over the weekend. Really hard. Yeah.
Absolutely. Also want to be just checking the disco reports with that. We know, of course, from last week, Trayvon Gray is out with a red card. We had some injuries to Christian Roldan, Musa Farrington. Those are guys are tagged as having some injuries, having some knocks right there. So keep an eye on those. I think Rusnak was also absent for. I think he picked up a hamstring, maybe.
Yeah.
So keep an
And
eye.
Tverskov was another important one. Tverskov from San Diego.
Yeah.
Coming off injured. He's a key player. Yeah.
So keep an eye on the MLS Disco page that gets updated later in the week. Unlike last week with everything kicking off on Wednesday, you have time to see what those updates are going to be to that system. So keep an eye on those and check it out from there. Okay, those are some of the key housekeeping important just with all the congestion. But let's talk about, with all of this in mind, Ron, how are you planning to navigate player selections going into this round? So who are you looking at? Keepers and defenders. Those in chat, share with us as well who you're looking at.
Yeah. So, once again, and over the last several weeks, I've really been keying in on XG in games for a bunch of reasons. And one is that, like, Kickbase is kind of, in particular, is kind of the XG game because you actually, if the goal happens, great. But if the goal almost happens, you often still get some points.
Yeah.
Right. And so, that's important. I think it's extremely important for attackers. For defenders and goalkeepers, the defensive XG situation or the expected goals against is complicated because I think that gives you a sense of how likely that team is to not, to have their opponents have a low score, maybe get the shutout points. But as we know, shutouts aren't the whole story. So, for goalkeepers, just a reminder, you also like people who have a lot of actions. And for defenders, you like people who are participants in the attack or who are on good teams that have good, and good chances of getting attacking returns along with the defensive stuff. If you just look at pure defensive issues, my favorite, or like as I analyze it, looking at the XG, the best teams look like Miami looks good, Columbus looks good. And even though they've had problems, Philadelphia is not terrible. And then NYFC also problems, not terrible. And there are a few others in there that I'm going to look at. But I think that those are important teams that are playing at home. And then away, I would still consider, absolutely consider Vancouver, St. Louis, and Seattle. And Seattle is probably absolutely the best of the away teams. So I do think that gives you a lot of choices for goalkeeper. So I'll just rattle off the people who I was looking at, and a couple others that just sort of fit. Either they get a lot of actions or they have the matchups look reasonable. So St. Clair from Miami, Schulte from Columbus, Freeze from NYCFC, Thomas from Seattle, Roman Berkey, Matt Turner, who's been playing very well and has been making a lot of good saves. Takaoka, who's been reliable because that team is shutting teams out a lot. Um, and actually, I think Cabral for RSL is a good one. He's a very good goalkeeper and he makes big saves. So I think his sort of floor as a goalkeeper is relatively good. So I don't know yet who I'm going to take. I think a lot of that goalkeeping choice is going to be like around my other choices because it's still just kind of hard. So I do think you have a lot of choices. Like I don't think it's like, oh, like you're stuck. But those are the ones that I looked at.
What about for defenders?
Oh yeah, defenders. So um pretty much a lock for me is Mikael from Miami. And that's because his floor is really good. He's a pretty much a locked starter, and I like their matchup against Orlando. There's some people might be like, well, Derby match, be a little careful, but I still like them. And then I think Columbus is a good matchup too. You know, Minnesota's not a bad team, but just like the underlying XG situation is pretty is good for Columbus. And so there, okay, so like Arfston is always the first choice because his attacking returns are great and that's paid off well for a lot of people. I think he did well this past weekend. But there are cheaper options and that will come into play, I think, for some people. So the sort of middle class of cheap is Amundsen, Zawadzki, or Morera, who are like range between 12.5 and 14.4 million. And then the cheap is Camacho. I think you give a little on upside with him, but he's 7 million. So I think you pick your Columbus defender. I think you should have a Columbus defender. I would consider it strongly, but I would pick based on kind of where it fits in the budget situation. Then I also mentioned that I thought NYCFC, despite their struggles, is still a good defensive shout against DC United. No, Tavon Gray, as you mentioned, is out, so you won't be picking him. So the top two in terms of averages would be Kai Truen and Tiago Martins. They're not lights out, but they're I think solid picks for the week. And then one of our friends in the chat, I think, appropriately mentioned that Tanisiewicz may be the likeliest replacement at right back for Tavon Gray, and he's 3.4 million. um, your challenge there is that they're the Sunday team, and you may just have some uncertainty. So I think Truen and Thiago Martins are like the locks to start. And then the last couple that I want to tout, again, picking against SKC, Seattle, like typically a very solid defense to choose. So I think like the blue chip player to take is Jackson Reagan. And then the very good value is Nuhu Tolo. I think like the most reliable that they're pretty much locked in starters, and Nuhu is cheaper and has been actually like is good value for the money. And that's who I'm looking at.
Those are some good ones. I'll build upon that a little bit. So with keepers, I'm liking Turner. I know you had mentioned him about doing well. He's shot up there in some of the average points. Good at stopping shots. Playing at home this week, and so I like that matchup. I like the potential that New England has. I like the potential that New England has for some points this round. I mean, they're going to be going up. Sorry, that's the wrong. That is the wrong round that I was looking at right there. There we go. They're going to be going up against Charlotte, which is not a prolific scoring team. So I think there will be opportunities there for him to get clean sheets and maybe get some shot stopping actions. There we go. as well, because that's always been the hesitation somewhat with Takaoka, as we've mentioned a few times this year, is his clean sheets aren't everything for helping them get the big returns that we've wanted. So I definitely I'm looking at Turner myself as a strong one. St. Clair, just because Orlando's bad. I mean, I think this is definitely a round where you have viable options from Miami at all positions. And so you're going to have to decide where you want to use them. But Orlando is not the great team. As you mentioned, the Derby. This is probably the one that I would easily not go with. Instead, go with the field players. I think it makes the most sense. But he's there. Agree with Thomas as well. Sporting Kansas City. Schulte as well. Bonus point potential, I think, against Minnesota. They've got not a bad team at all. Sort of struggling to really put together a couple of cohesive halves at times, but I think that is an opportunity for Schulte to get some bonus points there. I do also like Stuver. I think that Austin has a respectable defense. I think that St. Louis can put shots up, and so that can turn into some good bonus points. We've seen him. Stuver's he's definitely in the top 10 with kick base, with points and some of his averages, and maybe he's 6, but he's right there in the top with the point generation that he has, so I appreciate that. I saw in chat some people mentioning on the defender side, and I'll touch on it right now. Nashville, I'm hesitant for Nashville on my back line this week, just because of that CONCACAF game that they have. I expect a lot of rotation. Not sure what that's going to look like for them. So I am not really sinking into investing in a lot of Nashville players, and so that's my only hesitation. I mean, if you feel it and you think you've got a good read on who may or may not be rotated, if they have that, you could take a flyer, I suppose, because they're traveling to Philadelphia, and as I mentioned before, not huge on Philadelphia. But if there's a lot of rotation at Nashville, that definitely does open the door for a poor point performance for you there. Going over to defenders, I'm looking at similar people as you were talking about, Ron. I mean, I'm definitely looking at Vancouver. You talked about them being one of the teams on the road that you liked, traveling to LA Galaxy. I mean, I think we've seen some good returns there. I'm looking at Seattle as well, probably Reagan as my option with that one. And my third player, I was just tooling around with it right there. I'm looking at Arfson. I mean, I like the bonus point potential. I like the offensive potential there. I think Minnesota is a good team, but definitely isn't completely solid at the back. So I think there are some good options. Some of the other teams I was looking at, I kind of played around with. I know in the past I was talking about Guzman with Cincinnati. I'm not as sure about the defense for Chicago this week because Cincinnati is starting to get some of their offense together. I think there could be some goals there, just like there were some in the past. Maybe he has a chance at some offensive ability with the woes that Cincinnati has there, but I'm not so sure about defense. I think it's going to be a toss-up for the Red Bulls. I know we talked about Musa being injured, and he's been such a force for them there, but and that they've had some cheap options with New York in the past, but I'm not sure about the points potential right there. The most interesting one, I think, to navigate with if you want to look at some defense options here is Atlanta and Montreal, because both teams have struggled. Montreal is on the uptick right now, but is that going to continue? Is this going to be a 0-0 round? Is this going to be a time where there'll be some shots, but the defenders will be able to get those bonus points in there for the clearances, for the passes, for the interceptions? That one's kind of a toss-up, so I'm not sure how that one will be, but I think there could be some interesting maybe differentials there depending on how rotations happen with other games. So you could keep an eye on there. Just I don't know, that could be a fun one. Kick that one to Tyler and see if he's got some thoughts on it.
Yeah, it's the tough one with the thing with Atlanta is it's like a little hard to pick which defender.
Yeah.
Like I just don't have a natural go-to. Like I think Gregerson was a choice for unclear reasons. He sat out the first game of the DGW. And so I see that as a good defensive matchup, but it's still just hard for me to nail who to take, which doesn't mean there's not somebody there, but they haven't had a standout attacking player in their defense like they used to
Yeah.
with Brooks Lennon, et cetera, so we'll see.
Yeah, it would pretty much be Gregerson that I would kind of hope for. It's been Jacob in the past, but I know he's injured or he's unavailable,
Yeah.
and so he would probably be the one to be looking at. 14 million, maybe a little bit more expensive if you're trying to shave some money back there. But like I said, just an interesting option. Just both of those teams have kind of struggled, and so this could be around if there's heavy rotation for something like that could pay off. But I don't know. It's one that as I was going through, I kept thinking like this game right here. I don't know. Is there something there? Maybe it may just end up being that if you take a flyer on anybody, you're taking a flyer on Prince as a forward. So that could just be what it comes down to. But I did want to mention it. It was just part of the thought process I had. Ron had a lot of good picks to look at. I mean, other people like Glad, I think, are those options. Some good people there. I had not really had Miami on the radar. I was looking more on the offense, but I think that's a great shot. A great shout out there with Mikhail as well. Going to chat real quick. Seen a lot of the similar names there. Mascara. Are we talking about Portland's Mascara, Eric? Because I'm pretty sure he's injured.
Yeah, he's in.
Unless there's another one that I've overlooked. Mooney with San Jose. Yeah, totally get that
right.
one. Makes a lot of sense there as well. Arson, Reagan, Laborda. Yeah, Laborda would be a good target with Vancouver, like I was talking about right there. Yeah, double check Mascara there, Eric. I think he's been injured. I know he's got really high average, but I think that's based on some earlier point returns that he had.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting because, how can you ignore Mooney? He's I think the number one defender in the game.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to argue. He's, green go in that sense. It's I still worry sometimes about road teams that have to travel almost the whole continent. Still, just it may be a reflex to not take them, and maybe it's the wrong reflex because San Jose is a juggernaut right now, but they will have played midweek. I think they care. I think they care about the Open Cup, and so I don't think Mooney. I don't think he's wrong, but I don't think I'm going to take him.
Yeah, I know I've mentioned it before when I talk about Mooney, and I'm trying to get everything all lined up here. He's fifth in average points, and then he's first in total points. But a lot of other guys have been quickly catching up to him, and I think that's because his ceiling is just gone. Like some of what we saw at the beginning of the season is not a reflection, and he's still living off of that with his average and his points. The past several games been pretty low, but he gets a decent one every now and then. It kind of keeps him in that kind of highish average area. But I think we're going to see him start to come down. I don't not like him. Like I totally get it. On the road to Toronto, Toronto's not prolific. They've got Sargent, definitely hurt with some of the injuries that they had, but I don't.
Mihailovic.
Yeah, with Mihailovic, okay. Sargent's there still. Mihailovic is the one who's injured, but I just don't think he benefited from the early points, and I think that's what the wave that's been riding. And he's just okay. He's maybe even below average when it comes to sort of a floor for points. So that's what it is.
But he's still. I mean, it's just some of it is they just had a ton of shutouts, and he, and
sure.
it counts. He is a modest floor and a shutout many games and enough action set. So, there's a reason why he's still up there. But yeah, I got you. He's not lights out. Yeah.
Well, let's move on to midfielders. Ron, who are you looking at?
Yeah, so with both midfielders and forwards, I began just as I did with the defense, but sort of more confidently by looking at the attacks. And so the attacks that I am favoring this week. So one is RSL versus Portland. Portland is one of the leakiest defenses in the league. RSL is a vigorous attack. So that's number one. Similarly, Miami. So I like Miami attack versus Orlando. And okay, number three would be Chicago. and Chicago versus Cincinnati. And I mean, Cincinnati's a wild card, like, but the numbers say they've struggled. They do have a lot of changes. Like you can't, they've, you can't, these cobbled together things sometimes like, can outperform, but it's not crazy to bet against them. And Chicago has been in good form. Columbus is also a reasonable choice this week, and I like Columbus. Um, Houston is still like pretty good, and NYCFC also are the attacks that I'm most interested in. So from that, and well, and then those are of the road one or the of the home ones. I still think you can consider absolutely Vancouver and San Jose in the attack. So those are the among the road teams. And tough thing about Seattle is it's they're missing some attacking pieces, and it's a little hard to know like is it going to be Morris or Rothrock or like it's not quite set up as like a team with a go-to guy, right? Like it's always easier when there's a go-to guy. So um, so here's some specific midfielders that I'm looking at. So RSL again, Luna or Gozo, one of those two guys. Miami, I think if you look at Rodrigo De Paul's numbers, they're just really consistently high. he's very, very consistent. If you want a consistent fantasy player, man, he's high, and I like that matchup. So he's going to be on my squad. So Chicago, I, um, I think people should look at Marin Haile Selassie. I mentioned him before. One of the reasons is again the matchup is pretty good, and he has. So there's continued to be some issue with Bamba, and I don't know what it's like. He's has some personal things going on in France, and that has open things up for Marin Haile Selassie, and he's a very dynamic player and tends to score well. So another one, and I need to give you and Meg a shout out for identifying this next player from Columbus, who's Chambeau or Chambos, who he just he runs up a lot of bonus points on that team, and he has a really good floor, and it's a good matchup. So I like him. I still like Maxi Morales. It's amazing how he's got more. But no, actually, I have more gray hairs than he does. But he's still like, relatively speaking, for the league, he's got a lot of gray, but he doesn't play like he's got a lot of gray, and is still a key figure. I put down Pet Biel, but let me not talk about him. So another one. Okay, so Seattle, I think, is an interesting situation because I like this. I like the Seattle matchup against SKC, as I keep saying ad nauseum, and that mostly I think that means I want Christian Roldan if he is, especially if Rusnak is still having all those problems. Like if Roldan is no longer in concussion protocol. So one thing is like when you come back from injuries, like when you come back from some knee thing, like sometimes you're like, okay, we're going to play half the game and, or you re-injure it. But like most people, if they come back from a concussion protocol, they're totally fine, right? Like there's nothing that actually is limiting their soccer skill. It's like a safety thing, right? So if all of the injury, if he's not on the injury report, I like Roldan. And then I think Schneider Brunel has actually had some pretty good floor over there and is cheap at 8 million. So like he could be a guy that helps you put a lineup together. Still can't argue much against Muller and Berhalter from Vancouver. Prefer home players, but they're still pretty good. And Sekiris still stands out because of his budget quality, I think. But I think as I mentioned, from the takeaways at the beginning, I'm more concerned about Werner like taking some of his ceiling away now. And so Shakiris, if you like, he is helps you put your budget together. And we have to do that a lot. in the challenges and that kind of thing. So he's still relevant for that reason. So that's what I got.
Yeah, to your list, I'm going to add 3 players from what you've mentioned. I'll go to the chat real quick. First, I'm going to add Heel to that list. He has been seeing some more success lately than he did earlier in the season. I think Charlotte has been a team that has struggled to keep clean sheets for the year, and so I think there'll be good opportunities for Heel in that game, and so I think he's definitely worth a shout. I'm gonna add Evander to that list. I think he's getting his confidence back. I think I mentioned the attack is starting to click. Chicago. This is going to be a big game for Cincinnati. 2 weeks ago, they played Chicago, and they dropped a bunch of points on them, and now they're playing Chicago again at Chicago. So different environment, but I think that wound is still fresh, and I think that he's coming into form at a good time that makes him a viable pick. And then one who is coming back that I want to make sure people aren't forgetting about is Estaquillo. And I say that because he was having an excellent average prior to getting injured and not being available. And so keep an eye on him. He's coming back in. Maybe it's not this round. Of course, LA's also dealing with CONCACAF. So, but he is back in the mix. Keep an eye on Estaquillo, and he could be one of those players that just because of his consistently high floor becomes a very tempting target each round. I mean, I think from the numbers that we saw from Kickbase last year, I think that was Delgado was one of those players where it's just like, yeah, the system just benefited him.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like he plays on this really good team. He's a central cog on that really good team. Coming back from injury, if he's a lock starter, he's sort of in that like Tverskov kind of premium, defensive midfielder that just Kickbase really favors. Absolutely. So it's a great shout. There's still where it fits into the week, but I think what you're saying is people should have their eyes on him and not forget about him. That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I do. Yeah, I think he's just working. I don't have it in my team, but he's definitely one that I'm keeping an eye on right there. We had a question in chat. We listed a lot of players. Do you think Shambost makes your top 5 for this round, Ron?
Probably not. I don't think so. But you never know when it's like once you start to be like, okay, well, I have too many guys from this other team. Like he might fit in. And there's one of the challenges I think you can do maybe 6 midfielders or something like that. So like I think he's going to be in the running this week. He's taking sets and stuff for Columbus. So
it's 19.5, so he's cheaper. His points over the past few rounds, he's never scored below 120, maybe 121, but he's never scored below 120 for the past 5-ish rounds, which is fine. But in general, you're looking for midfielders who are really kind of pushing that 180, 200 mark to kind of keep a competitive edge right there. I like the game against Minnesota. I think he'll have opportunities. It's not a lights out game, sort of like we've seen. I mean, we had Philadelphia last time. We had LAFC before that. Those were definitely better games for him. Probably easier games. Minnesota, you know what? Maybe I'm giving your team a little bit too hard, Ron. Minnesota, maybe probably on par with LA Galaxy. So.
A little better form for them, but the numbers would agree with you. I think the underlying numbers. And one thing I saw in the chat is Eric mentioned Mukhtar, and it's like I think I would just be careful. I said this before, but it looks good from a matchup standpoint, and they're an amazing team, but Callahan has kind of showed you what he does with these midweek games in the CONCACAF. Those guys are going to be on the bench. probably. And they're going to try to like keep the game close, and then put those like Surridge and Mukhtar and SB in at 60, 70 minutes. And that's just like, I'd rather find other players. They can still do well, right? Like Surridge came off the bench and had a brace this weekend, but it's like, minutes matter because you add up so many different things in the minutes. They help protect your floor, and it becomes really like risky when the people have short minutes. So
Absolutely. They're absolutely well said.
just a thought there. Yeah.
Let's move on to forwards. Ron, who are you looking at?
Yeah. So again, following from that same general kind of list of attacking teams, um, well, okay, here's one little problem, which is I like RSL, and I probably like Gilavogi if I'm going to take an RSL player. You've had good matches from Salons, but he came off the bench last time, and then Olatunji started the match. So there's a little bit of like, who do I have here? But I think intention is for Gilavogi to be like a regular starter. So if I'm going to take one from RSL, I think it's going to be him, but with a little bit. Then for Miami, so Leo Messi is going to be on my team.
Who?
And then I think Bertarame is improving because he's started to put together, a little collection of goal contributions. His confidence looks a little bit more, and they're at home. So, another player who's like coming to life in the last few weeks is Zinkernagel. So, as you mentioned, I think the biggest single match this past, single score from the double game week, but just from a single match was Zinkernagel. So I'm interested in him, but Kuiper's is good too. Now Kuiper's missed a penalty kick. Then, so gets like the negatives points for missing that. Then gets a brace after he misses the penalty kick. So still ends up with a really good score. So then, who knows? Does that mean is he going to be off pens? Probably not. But I like both of those guys. But maybe it would go with Zinkernagel if I'm picking just one. And then Rossi from Columbus, I like Rossi because there you got that, like, remember we used to talk about X guy, like who's the guy? I think that was from John or somebody from the Discord was like, who's got X? He's the guy, from the team, right? Like Messi has that. But it's just, one of the consequences, Columbus playing a little better, but one of the consequences of the Abu Ali injury is, that they're like trying to get the ball to Rossi.
Yeah.
Like that's strategic for them, and that makes him very convenient. Some usual suspects are still usual suspects this week. So Guilherme from Houston, Nico Fernandez Mercado from NYCFC, and White from Vancouver. Those are all like, you can't really argue against those choices very strenuously. So San Jose is interesting because like everybody on the front line has had some pretty good games recently. Werner, Judd, because Judd is in very good form right now, and Buddha. So, but I've got to say, if you're going to pick one, it's got to be Timo Werner. Like he's the man right now, especially taking the penalties away from Sekiris. Like Werner's pretty good. And then I still think I still think if you're looking for a cheap forward, the answer is Hall from Red Bull.
Yeah.
And it's not my favorite matchup, but these are the things you do when you're putting together some lineups. So
yeah, if you've got to make it work for there. Yeah, I don't have any notes to add to that one. I mean, I think for me, it sounds like you're saying Kuiper Zinkernagel is the new Bouanga-Son dilemma that people have here. I would also go Zinkernagel with this one. In the past, he's been lined up in the game as a midfielder, so I think he has that service ability as well that maybe we don't see as much from Kuipers, who's more of the target. But both of them are doing amazing. But I think you might have a bit more versatility in points from Zinkernagel than necessarily Kuipers. But it'll be a good opportunity, and if Cincinnati doesn't have a more solid defense, I think this will be another high scoring game for Chicago. So good coverage right there. I don't know if that means you go both, but but as I talk through that, I'm like, I mean, maybe someone wants to just double down with that. Other than that, yeah, Messi, one of the Chicago players, and for me, it really opens up. And you covered a lot of the names there. I mean, I've talked about White. I think I have Nico in there right now. Guilherme. I mean, that's always a potential option right there. But I think, yeah, I think you covered all. Surridge has that big question mark about when's he going to play. The differential seems like Prince to me against that Atlanta team to see what if he is going to continue his scoring streak right there. So I mean, I think that's also some
Yeah.
different players you could think about throwing onto that list. But otherwise, I think you named all the main go-to guys right there. Looking at chat, um, we got Messi, Nico, Kuipers. Yeah, no, I mean I like Nico. He's on my team right now. We got Gene talking about Baribo as a differential. Makes total sense right there. Morris, he's looking at Morris for that. I think you had mentioned Morris in the previous section.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I mean, he's a forward, but I mean, the thing about Morris is like, I mean, when you nail him, he's a guy who scores like 0 or 4 goals or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's like hard. He's like you have to be a little bit of a psychic to like get Morris right. I
Yeah.
just, you know, so um, yes, his matchup is good. He could go off. It seems like he's physically up to he's not injured right now. He's a lock starter, I think. And so, yeah.
All right, well, let's round things out with talking about captains. Who are you looking at?
Yeah, I'm going to captain Messi. And I mean, I just captaining Messi.
Okay. Okay. I'm on the fence. I mean, yeah, definitely considering Messi, but I know I've often liked going to the Berhalter. I know they're on the road this week, and so that may be a little bit less. But I think DePaul is also in the running for me as potentially a captain option. He's had some good, uh, just good numbers that he's get there with his production and some good high numbers as well. So if Messi doesn't produce, then I still think there's a chance that he still has some numbers. But Messi, very viable. I think those would be the three that I have on my list right now that I'm bouncing around.
Yeah, I mean, I love that DePaul shout. I mean, if you like, he can have great games and his floor is really good. And, those are kind of captainy features. Probably my third one on my list is Rossi. Like, I
Okay,
think that
I see that.
I think he's definitely viable. I'm excited for his game this week.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Uh, and then let's wrap things up. I think you've updated the rush. Let's talk about the Kickbase Week 10 rush. So a little bit tweak this time. Your budget is 250 million, much more generous, I think, than the 200 that we had before. 2 players per club, and you can choose from one of 3 lineups: a 5-3-2, a 3-5-2, and a 2-3-5. And Ron, you think there is a clear winner here?
Yeah, I still for both just looking at the averages and also for the fact that like I struggle the most with defenders in Kickbase. Um, think you should pick the choice that has the least number of defenders, and that's the 2-3-5 lineup. And so like I think it's unambiguous. You should do a 2-3-5. I'm sure somebody's going to win the week doing something different, but that's not going to be me. And so yeah, that's what I think in terms of formation. Did you want to talk about your lineup first, or you want me to?
No, you can go to. I mean, I think your
Okay.
formation's right. I noticed some of the Kickbase players, some of the staff shared some of their rosters last week, and they all went for that 6 forward lineup. And so I think clearly that's the attackers are getting some love here, and I like it.
Yeah. So okay. So um, it's funny that the budget is still not is still it still impacted my decisions a lot because there's some expensive players and so I had to balance them. But so I have Messi with the captain on him, Hall because he's cheap, Guilherme because he's one of the best in the game. Rossi because we talked about what he has going for him today, this weekend, and Nico um, Fernandez Mercado. That's my five forwards, and then my midfield right now is Rodrigo DePaul, Snyder Brunel, and then Sakiris with caveats mentioned. And then my back line of two is Amundsen, who I think might be like your first alternative to Arfston. Um, and then Nuhu, who is your first alternative to Reagan. So this is part of the rest of the affordability. And for now, I have Cabral at the goalkeeper, which is a little bit out of left field, but I liked what I saw of him against the Galaxy. And that left me with 2.5 million smackers left over. So I'm still going to tinker.
So no, I think that's worth. I'm I haven't settled in on everything just yet with my team, but did you all just hear my dog? Excuse me, ma'am. That's inappropriate right now. I'm not looking at Messi. I usually find Messi too expensive for the lineups I want to roll with. I'm looking at White, Nico, and Guilherme right now. I'm trying to stack some of the midfield. I like being able to use Berhalter, Tsakiris, and Gozo right now and there, and then just find some budget defenders. Hall will be in there for sure, and that should still leave me with 30 something million to get for a fifth forward. Turner is who I'm looking at for the keeper right now. So I'm still playing around with the forwards. I think we've had a lot of good names that we mentioned here. But I like that midfield, and I tend to feel like I have more flexibility with this 250, definitely with the 200, but even with the 250, I feel like I have more flexibility to get more points out of upgrading different players than just running with Messi. Though we do have captains as an option now.
Right. One thing, there's a couple of things you just said that are like extremely compelling to me. So one is clearly if you fade Messi, your budget is way more flexible.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I'm like have too many marginal people just to have Messi there. And the other thing too is that one of the reasons that we very often are captaining Messi, and you've really made me think about this, is that he might go off and and just his averages are high, and you, especially in a ongoing competition where you're worried about losing ground, or his percent ownership is very high, and so you can be, if he has a bad game, you're kind of protected by that fact, and if he has a good game, well, like great, and if you didn't take him and he had a good game, you could be in a world of hurt. But that's one of the nice things about these challenges is it's a one-off.
Yeah.
So, you can you should for fun be pursuing some risky strategies, not like safe, strategies or like defensive strategies in these rush challenges. So yeah, it's just a really good point.
Yeah, I mean, here's something I just threw together. I could run with Guilherme, Nico, White, Hall, Zinkernagel as a top five, Berhalter, Tsakiris, Gozo, shaving some money with like Nuhu, Mooney, something there in the back, and Turner. Still leaves me with 15 million in the bank. So there's something I'm kind of playing around with right now, just as we've been talking through some things. Can throw a captain on Berhalter or Zink or someone like that. So, and that's without having Messi. And so for me, I still feel like at the 250 range, I can upgrade some players by doing that.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair, valid, as the kids say.
Yeah. As always, though, would love to hear what you all think about how you're approaching Week 10. Would love to hear who you're looking at for your players as you're going at each of the positions. As more information's coming out, this is our Monday just download of the games, first thoughts as we're approaching building the lineup here to kind of help you with your thought process going forward. That's all that we have for the show today. Let's wrap everything up with our plugs. Ron, who do you want to shout out?
Well, I usually don't shout out the Discord, even though I love the Discord, because I just it's like, the basic thing to say is to shout out the Discord. And it's great. So I will shout out, I will shout out the Discord, which is to say the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord. But I would still encourage people playing the kick-based games to like go over to the kick-based Discord, because there's just like meaningful discussions and kind of like events and things like that, that there's sort of things happening over there. I just think there's you're limiting your information if you don't venture over there. So you go ahead, whatever.
That's great.
It's another Discord. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord is fantastic to hang out there, of course. Don't forget to check out MLSFantasyBoss.com. We've got Ron's article. We've got Tyler's article there as well, the podcast that's posted. If other people are interested in contributing, if other people are interested in giving us some information about what they'd like to see, let us know. We're still working through how to do a rankings article. It's not off the radar, but just kind of going through all the data and information that we have here as we learn everything. But check out MLSFantasyBoss.com. And also, I just want to do a quick early shout out is Ron and I are working on some other guests for the show that we hope will be really fun for people. If there's people that you want to hear, let me know. We'll see what kind of voices we can get here on the show to talk about Kickbase, talk about SofaScore, whatever you want. It's not 100% one platform or the other as we're going through this year of Fantasy Evolution. So thank you all for listening to the show tonight. I hope you got some information that will help you as you're building your teams going into round 10. And as always, good luck.